continue on now talking about these different subtypes of epithelium. Again, really looking at overall what is their appearance. Again, what are they going to be good at? And then because of that, where in the body do we find them? So, simple squamous epithelium, the blue arrow, as you can see over here, is pointing at this. It's just this thin layer of cells right here. So a lot of time these ones are going to look like, it says they're like a sunny side up egg, a fried egg, where the nucleus is the thickest part of the cell. These are incredibly flat cells. Cytoplasm, a lot of times you can't even see it, super, super thin. Usually kind of, like I said, a rounded nucleus here, but really it's the thickest part of the cell. Again, these are a single layer of a very, very flat cell. So if we start thinking about what might they be good at, we're going to think about protection, not really. Things like diffusion, filtration would be those places where we would think this would work the best. Where are places in the body that have that? Well, if we start thinking about this, you can think about things like the air sacs of the lungs. We need the gases to exchange really fast. Filtration in the kidneys. Different blood vessels with the capillaries and having stuff diffuse in or out of the bloodstream. Outside that, we see these on certain serous membranes that are lining the cavities of the body, things like the parietal and visceral pleura and things like that. And again, you can kind of see it on the picture here, showing that epithelium right along the surface here. Again, shows you, excuse me, on a blood vessel. Again, the thinness lets things move through it quickly. Not something that's going to be particularly good at protection. Does a little bit of secretion, but I mean, in reality, this is a thin membrane that allows stuff to pass through it quickly through diffusion, osmosis, or under pressure with things like filtration. And again, a few other functions, like it's saying here, you do get a little bit of secretion of those serous membranes, things like the visceral and parietal pleuras. Simple cuboidal epithelium, again, these ones you can see the red box kind of showing you that one there. It is usually a centralized rounded nucleus, may or may not have microvilli. Again, if it's going to have microvilli, these are extensions of the plasma membrane, increasing the surface area of the cell, so kind of leading you to this idea that it's probably going to be involved in absorption. Again, because increased surface area means we can exchange with the environment a little bit easier. And you can see it lit up in the blue over on the upper left here of the screen. All those cuboidal cells, again, centralized nucleus. Doesn't have to be perfectly squared off. They can be a little bit rounded. As you can see on these ones, a little bit more rounded. We see these in a lot of different types of epithelium where absorption and secretion take place. So things like the liver and the hepatocytes in the liver, the pancreas, the secretory parts of the pancreas, thyroid, salivary glands, things like that. A lot of kidney tubules where we're doing a lot of reabsorption, we see these, as well as some of the other tubules within the lungs. Again, a lot of absorption and secretion. This is going to be the main things we see on most epithelial types. So absorption in those kidney tubules, absorption in the liver. We see a lot of secretion in a lot of the other areas, these glandular epitheliums, things like the thyroid gland, the salivary gland, where we're secreting these substances either out in the bloodstream or into a duct. The last of the simple epitheliums is the simple columnar epithelium. Tall, skinny cells here, like I said before, oval or sausage-shaped nuclei, generally on the basal side of the cell. May have microvilli present, again, going to be involved secretion if they do. Few types of this, such as in the fallopian tubes of the female, can have cilia present on them. The other thing we'll see with these ones, a lot of goblet cells to secrete mucus, help stuff keep moving past these cells. Again, with the microvilli and that absorption, we're going to see this is a lot actually in the digestive tract. You can see the goblet cells on this image right here with the kind of lit up light tops here, the later ones here. They get their name because they look like the top of a wine goblet or a water goblet. And again, where do we see this? Really, for the most part, most of the digestive tract. Once you get past the esophagus, stomach, intestines, both large and small, pretty much almost all the parts of them are going to be lined with this simple columnar epithelium. We see it inside of the fallopian tubes, like I said, as well as within the uterus, ciliated in the uterine tubes, as well as the lining of the gallbladder is another spot we'd find this. Again, doing a lot of absorption and secretion. If you think about what the digestive tract is doing, a lot of absorption there. Obviously, the fallopian tube's a little bit different. That cilia, its whole job is to move the egg cell or ovum down to the uterus. And again, the idea with the secretion of this mucus is really to keep stuff moving through that digestive tract so nothing gets stuck. And this shows you some of the different subtypes. This is a nice little one here, nice summary slide. You can go and print this one out. It's a good way to kind of get at those main things. Again, as I was saying, on a lot of these ones here, it's going to be what is the structure based on the name, what is its function, where do you find it? Those are the things that are going to get asked about in this. Of the stratified types, we have stratified squamous. Again, lots of layers of very thin cells. We actually see this a lot with the skin. You have what is called the keratinized version with the skin. In this one, we have this substance, this protein called keratin that fills the cells. Actually, once they're fully filled with keratin, they're dead. But you have a lot of these tough cells that are all stuck together, layers and layers of it. And if you think about your skin, you can damage the skin, scrape some layers off, and still have layers there. So again, very good protective layer. If you think about the mucous membrane, so the inside of your mouth, it doesn't have that same keratinized layers there. But again, multiple layers of these cells, which again, if you lose a layer or two, you still have protection of those underlying tissues. So you can see non-keratinized version right here. You don't see any of that kind of flaky stuff on the surface. Where the keratinized version, you're going to see a little bit more flakiness on the surface. And again, places we see this really keratinized, it is the skin. We see it any place where we have actually keratinized the skin. So epidermis everywhere. So arms, palms, and soles of feet are very heavily keratinized. The palms and the soles of the feet, that is. Outside of that, the non-keratinized versions, it's really a lot of your mucous membranes. So oral cavity, the lining of your esophagus, other tubes that are open to the outside of the body, like the anal canal and the vagina, are also lined with this non-keratinized version. But again, you can see here, still lots of multiple layers here, where if some of this was lost, you still have layers underneath that are protecting the underlying tissues. And again, you can see the difference here where this is that flaky surface I talked about. I always say it looks like baklava, that phyllo dough on baklava. If you've ever had the Greek dessert, that flakiness on the surface looks kind of like that. Where this one, you see that is missing. Both of these are stratified squamous. One is keratinized, one is not. Again, multiple layers. The more cell layers you get there, the thicker you get something. It's not going to do absorption well. It's not going to probably do secretion very great either. This type of tissue is pretty much 100% for protection. The keratinized version, really keeping water in us. It doesn't let bacteria grow on it very well. The non-keratinized version, again, any area where there's mechanical abrasion that's open to the outside of the body, we tend to have this present. I always joke around and kind of say that it's a good thing that the esophagus is made of this, because every once in a while you don't chew up a Dorito well, and in reality you don't want to lose your life to having not chewed up a Dorito well, where it opened you up as it went down there. Because of the fact we have stratified squamous, that is not going to happen. The next couple here, not as common. We see these in a lot fewer places. Stratified cuboidal epithelium. The main thing with the stratified layers, again, it's what's on the apical surface. So if you look on this one here, this would be that apical surface along the side right here. This is a cube-shaped cell, even though the ones underneath are flatter, so it is stratified cuboidal. 2 layers, surface layer is cube-shaped. We see these generally in sweat glands underlying the skin that we'll see. The other place we'll see this, that you can always find it, is an ovarian follicle. These are called granulosa cells that are surrounding that developing egg cell, which is what you're seeing right here. And again, you can see it in another area right here. You can see the flatter cells underneath, cube-shaped cell on the surface. And this is again another ovum right here. And the surrounding granulosa cells, you can see multiple layers of those stratified cuboidal cells. Again, lots of secretion when it comes to these things. Sweat glands obviously are secreting sweat. The follicular cells of the female reproductive tract are secreting things like estrogens, or after the egg cell is ovulated, progesterone. But again, secreting substances. The last of your 6 basic naming types here is that stratified columnar. Again, apical cell is cube-shaped. You can see the ones underneath, I mean, it's not cube-shaped, columnar-shaped. The ones underneath are a little bit more cube-shaped. This one, this is not one I'm going to expect you to be able to name someplace or show you a picture of it and probably have you identify it, in that it is very rare. You see it every once in a while in a number of different places, but there's not a slide I could pick out if we were doing lab this semester, take the slide to you and say, here, find stratified columnar on this. A lot of times we see it junctions between two different types of epithelial tissue. It kind of helps weld those together. So like it says, there are small parts of the anal canal, the pharynx, epiglottis, male urethra, sometimes in sweat or salivary glands, but there's not ever one that I can grab the slide and say, it will be here, keep looking. So again, know what it is, know the places that you could possibly find it, but don't expect to be asked a lot of questions about this one, and just that it's a very rare type. And again, you can kind of see a little bit more zoomed in images of it here, but you can see the surface one is that columnar shaped right here. Pseudostratified, again, this goes back, shows you a little bit better now with this picture. So you can see here, all these cells are actually in contact with the basement membrane, which means there isn't truly two layers of cells. There's one layer of cells, that those layers of cells might be taller or shorter, but because they all touch the basement membrane, it's actually a single layer. So this is pseudostratified columnar epithelium. A lot of times it has cilia. One of the main places we see this is actually lining the respiratory tract. A lot of goblet cells mixed in with this. Generally, if I show you one with cilia, I'm not going to try and find the fallopian tube and make you differentiate simple columnar ciliated versus pseudostratified ciliated. So main thing on this one is it looks like it's stratified cuboidal. It looks like it's stratified columnar, but it is not stratified columnar epithelium. And again, you can kind of see here, it looks like these multiple layers of nuclei here, multiple things. You can see the cilia. This would probably be, this is like it says there, is the trachea. One of the easiest places to see this, if we were doing lab, those would be the slides I'd be giving you to go and find it on. Again, what does it look like? What is it going to be good at? Doing a little bit of secretion, helping move stuff past those cells is really what we're doing with this one. So this shows you those non-ciliated forms. There is a non-ciliated form as well. Again, I'm probably not going to show you that and ask you that. And again, generally respiratory tract, a little bit in the male reproductive tract, the non-ciliated versions. Again, not one that I have slides of or stuff that I'm probably going to find and try to show it to you. The whole idea on this one here is there's those goblet cells create a lot of mucus. The mucus traps stuff that you inhale in. We then have all the cilia on the surface, and it's, like I said before, crowd surfing, pushing all this stuff back up to your throat. Smoking is not good for these cilia, which is part of the reason that a lot of times smokers get that smoker's cough, because they don't have these cilia to move substances out of the lungs, and therefore they have to force it up with a cough. And this just shows the little cartoon showing this, where you can see the pathogens get in there, the mucus traps them, and then the cilia sweep them out. And really, the last of our epithelial subtypes is going to be that transitional epithelium. It looks kind of like stratified squamous, but it's more bubbly and rounded on the surface. This one is, again, I always say they should have called it stretchy epithelium, just for the very simple fact that when it's relaxed, there's 5 to 6 layers, they're more rounded and bubbly looking. When they get stretched out, they tend to start looking a little bit more like normal, a lot of the other types of epithelium, and there's less layers of them. So again, where do we have stretching taking place? It's really kind of the renal pelvis of the kidney, the ureters, and the bladder. So it's really, you find it in that the urinary tract. But you can see how it's bubbly looking here. If you were to find a slide of it with it stretched, you'd see it's 2 to 3 layers thick and much more regular looking. And like I said, in those areas of the urinary tract that are going to have urine building up in it, so we do not stretch and have urine traveling between the cells. Its name was actually kind of a misnomer. They thought it was kind of somewhere between stratified squamous and stratified columnar. It isn't, but the name stayed. Like I said, to me, think of it as stretchy epithelium. That is the easiest way to remember it. If this is the type that stretches, where do you see it? In those areas. So again, if we look at overall at the different types of epithelium, you can kind of see that simple epithelium, again, going to be much better at diffusion osmosis, letting things pass through it, as well as absorbing or secreting things out of it. Again, mainly just because it's not so thick, where a lot of that stratified epithelium is going to be much better suited for protective functions, again, especially the stratified squamous. Again, got a nice summary here of the different types that we've went through. And then finally you have a nice little kind of combination of images here that give you some just kind of cartoon drawings of each of them and what's involved with those. So next time we'll take a look at some of the stuff with the different glands and things that are going on with epithelium.